Max, welcome to the show.
How you doing, man?
Doing wonderful. How about yourself?
It's interesting times.
Really? How so?
Just, with all that's going on in the world, and just trying to be a musician and trying to be, working and trying to be relevant.
Gotcha. How do you define relevancy?
Well, just being wanted, because, let's be honest, arts is kind of like the last thing on the list, of wants and needs, after, the basics.
Right.
But without us, it's like you can't really enjoy this,
Right.
So that's why we do what we do.
Okay. So I guess you're commenting on a general broad base, a lack of interest in the arts.
Right.
Okay. And what do you think brought that on? Has it always been that way, or something related to the pandemic, or what would you say?
It could be a little bit of both.
Okay.
It's just like I don't know, when I think about the music programs that I grew up with, because they all got cut. So kids today don't get to experience the stuff that I went through, as a grade school kid, junior high, high school. It's like programs that, for the most part are pretty much gone. At least the elementary school program that I grew up with no longer exists.
Right.
It's like the middle school program, it's on its way out. So the only place where you could actually learn an instrument now is high school, and that's already too late, by our standards.
Sure.
Because, most of us, we all started in grade school.
Okay.
I don't know, but that's just,
I mean, yeah, I think you're spot on with that. There have been tremendous cuts. A lot of people talk about it.
Yeah.
And we don't know how that's going to affect, the next generation. But it certainly is to some extent.
The difference is this generation has YouTube.
Yeah.
So that's a different vibe altogether. But
it's like a university, right? In a way.
Yeah. But they don't have that luxury that we had, where we got to play live in front of people. Because I was playing live, when I was in junior high, and that was like that's an experience that, kids really don't get to do. They play concerts in school and stuff, but I'm talking about playing in a club, playing professionally. That stuff doesn't happen anymore, because when we were growing up, it's like, the laws were a little bit lax about enforcing underage kids working in a bar, but, back then, it's like, we could play, as long as we weren't drinking beer, but, it was a different time altogether, and it was a great way to like learn your craft on the job.
Sure. Well, actually, so on that subject, take us back a little bit even before then. So how did you actually get your start? We know you started gigging very young, but how was music introduced to you? And you're known as, one of the go-to keyboard players, and I know you do some vocals and probably play a few other instruments, but how did it actually start for you?
Oh, man. Okay. My first instrument was violin.
Okay.
I started in a school orchestra as a kid.
How old were you?
And about 8 or 9.
Okay.
It started there. It's like violin, piano. It was basically my dad's idea to keep me out of trouble, was to keep me occupied, and music did that.
Okay.
Because I gravitated towards it only because, my father was a singer, my mom was a singer, and my father, he was in the Navy, so, being a professional musician wasn't in the cards for him, especially since he had a family. My mom, she basically put herself through med school singing in my grandpa's bar.
Oh, wow.
Because my grandfather had a bar.
Okay. Where was that?
This is Dominican Republic.
Okay.
So I'm half Dominican, half Filipino. So, there's that running thread of, music, on both sides of the family.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. You know, so I was exposed to it as a young kid, and you know, my father was your typical, you know, Navy sailor. He had a bunch of side hustles. You know, I mean, you know, besides, you know, working in a Navy, you know, he would work as a projectionist in the theater.
Oh, okay,
You
that's
know,
cool.
he would work the concession stands at the USO shows,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and you know, stuff like that. Because you know, on a couple of things, he would bring me along, you know, and I was, I don't know, about 4 or 5 years old. I saw Felix Cavallari and the Animals, you know,
Okay.
playing a USO show, and I remember being basically this close, you know, to Felix, you know, his big B3,
Okay.
you know, and 4 or 5 years old, and I watched him play, and I thought that was the coolest thing, you know,
Nice.
and I thought I want to do that. And at the time, you know, my parents, you know, they didn't want to start me too early on piano, you know, because it, you know, even though my mom, you know, she was like a regular pianist, you know, it's like they thought I was still too young, you know, at that age. So I didn't really start piano until I was 8, you know,
Okay.
when we moved to California,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but
So you guys were originally what
we were
part of the
living,
country?
we were living in Long Island, New
Oh, okay,
York, you
okay,
know,
okay.
and so, you know, and my dad was, you know, he was stationed at the Brooklyn Naval Yard, you know, way back, you
Ah.
know, so that was a whole different vibe. We lived in Long Island. My mom's side of the family, they were all in the boroughs, you know, they
Mm-hmm.
were all in like Manhattan,
Queens,
Brooklyn,
Brooklyn, Bronx.
Bronx. Yeah, so they were all over the place. You know, a couple of cousins live in Jersey, you know, so, you know, that was when I
So
was
that's where
little.
you get that East Coast swag, huh?
Yeah, you know what? And to be honest with you, even though we moved, you know, from the East Coast when I was 7, I still feel,
A little
you
bit
know, a
connected.
connection, you know, to New York. I feel like a New Yorker still,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it's like, you know, growing up, we were all about the Mets and the Jets, and that's a whole other discussion altogether, you know, because I mean, you know, you're either a Yankee fan or a Mets fan. Our family was all about the Mets,
Right,
you know.
right,
So
right.
my dad hated George Steinbrenner. That's another story.
Okay, okay. Definitely, we'll save that for next time, next episode.
Yeah.
Okay, so another thing that I would love to clarify for the people that are viewing this. Some people pronounce your last name differently. How do you correctly pronounce it?
Okay. Correct pronunciation is Sape.
Okay,
Pronounce the Z like a S.
gotcha. Okay.
You know, that's traditional. That's supposed to be the Spanish pronunciation.
Right, right.
But, you know, when I did my DNA test, you know, because we always thought that the origin of the name might have been Sicilian,
Mm-hmm.
but it turns out the origin of the name might be Czech.
Oh, wow. Okay.
You know, because it turned out that I had some Czech blood from my dad's side of the family.
Okay.
And so I'm thinking, okay, that might be the origin of the name.
Okay, and by the way, just to clarify, is your dad from the Dominican side, or he's
No,
Filipino?
Filipino. He's Filipino, but he's a mutt too. You know,
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
his side of the family has Chinese blood and Chinese, Spanish, and Czech. I mean, you know, my mom's side is even more of
More of a
Heinz
mixture.
57. Oh
Okay.
yeah, French, Dutch, you know, African.
Uh-huh.
You know, because I got, you know, it's like because of my mom, I'm 10% African.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know, but you know, that's the Caribbean for you. You know,
Yeah.
because my mother, you know, she would always tell me, you know, there's slaves and slave owners, pirates. You know, they're all on her side of the
Everybody's
family.
in the mix somewhere, right?
Oh yeah, man. You know, I love the stories about the pirates. You know, because you got French. You got the French and the Creole and the Dutch.
Right,
you know,
right,
they
right.
were all, you know, they were all over the Caribbean, you know?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was the vibe.
Absolutely. Max, musically speaking, you've done a lot. You've done a lot of stuff, a lot of different styles. And, you know, so I would ask you, you know, 2 questions related to that. First question is, what are you most known for? Okay.
Cool.
From
Wow.
like, in other words, when people call you, what are they calling you for primarily? because you do a lot of different stuff and you do it very well at a high level. That's the first question. And then the second question is, what is the best gig you've ever had?
Oh, wow. Okay. I think I'm probably known more for the smooth jazz stuff, only because, I did that probably the longest, because, I played with Reggie all these years, Reggie Smith, and then, Patrick Yandel, different bands. I mean, one of the first bands I played with when I moved back to town was with Forecast, and I got that, and Reel to Reel, those two bands.
Okay.
And I got those numbers from the late Carl Evans Jr., from Fatburger.
Okay.
And, because my friend had been taking saxophone lessons with Hollis Gentry, and he said, "Hey, let's go see Fatburger. They're playing at the PB Cafe."
Okay, and some of these, just to note, some of these players are sort of legendary regionally, here in the San Diego area.
Exactly, and basically, you can argue that Fatburger basically started the smooth jazz format.
Absolutely,
you can argue for that,
at least from a regional standpoint. Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, I went to go to the PB Cafe basically to watch my friend's teacher play the saxophone, and I met Carl for the first time, and Carl said, "You want to sit in?" And I said, "Sure." I sat in. I think I played "Feel Like Making Love," Roberta Flack, and when I finished the tune, the first thing Carl says to me is like, "Are you looking for a gig?" I said, "Yeah." And,
all right.
He gave me a couple of numbers. Next thing I know, I'm gigging.
Okay.
So, if anything, my start was because of Carl.
Okay.
So, I mean, he's forever family to me. His whole family is family. His brother Mike, I still play with his brother Mike, to this day.
Cool.
Cool.
Okay, so that's the first question, sort of what you are known for. And then second question would be, what would you say your best gig of everything you've done? If you had to pick out one thing, what would it be?
I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I probably had the most fun the 6 years I spent doing cruise ships.
Okay. What line was that?
Carnival Cruise Lines.
Okay, the fun ship.
Yeah, I did that from '92 to '98. And it's only because what I liked about it was all about music. It's like back then we didn't have cell phones, didn't have much of an internet, so, we spent all our time, shedding, I mean, my sight reading was like on a whole other level. And it's like,
it has to be. And
it's funny because when I think about it now, I was a better reader back then than I am now. And it's only because now I don't get to do that, on a weekly basis. Because like on the ship, you had, different people playing with you every week. So you would have to read charts all the time, and that doesn't happen anymore.
Game's got to be tight with that, right?
Yeah, and on top of that, you had to be able to adapt, stylistically. I mean, I was doing like legit country stuff, man, on the cruise ship. I had never really done country, and when you try to do a jazz chord on a country tune, man, it's like the fiddle player will just give you that look like, "No, man, this is not jazz." He goes, "Play simple. I just want triads." I'm like, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah." And the funny thing about it is that particular fiddle player, he would sit in with us on our Dixieland set, but he could play like legit jazz. This is a guy that grew up listening to, Stefan Grappelli and Joe Venuti. So he knew how to play that stuff, but he also grew up in Texas, and so since he played with the Texas Playboys, Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys, he was into the country swing stuff, and that was his vibe. And so if you play his country tunes, it had to be simple. It's like, he goes, "Save all those altered chords, man, for your jazz." I mean, the most complicated chord in his music was a seventh, a dominant seventh. Okay. That's it.
Okay. Well, hey, it got the job done, right? It got the job done. Sometimes less is more, depending on what we're doing.
That's why, I had a lot of fun on the cruise ship, and then, you had such a wide variety of people. And then on top of that, you're going from port to port, and I miss that vibe. I was young, I was single, so it was like it was a good hang.
Okay.
I still recommend it to this day. It's like for young cats coming up, it's like, okay, if you're looking for a gig and you want to get your chops up, go on the boat.
Okay.
Do that, for a summer.
Okay.
See if you like it.
Awesome. Max, this is a relative thing, but I would say for you, how would you define success as a musician?
Oh, you know what? Just to be able to pay your bills. That's, I mean, everyone defines it differently. But I mean, as long as you're able to take care of yourself and people you love, and to be able to afford the toys that you need to do your gig, that's success to me.
Sure.
Because I mean, not everybody can be a rock star.
Absolutely
and
true.
play in front of a stadium. And so I tell everybody there's different levels of success. Because I mean, I know guys that make six figures that don't even play live.
Sure.
The only thing they do is teach. So there's that. So how do you define it?
Gotcha.
It's like it's different for everybody.
Absolutely, it is.
And a wise woman once told me, no two musicians share the same path.
Right.
Every path journey. Is different.
Very unique journey amongst us all. Okay, so you mentioned something interesting in that about Rockstar. So as of lately, maybe 2 days ago approximately, we heard some very sad news about the Taylor Hawkins, drummer for the Foo Fighters, and very
that hit everybody like a brick.
Legendary band, and as a drummer and a bass player, but my drum side definitely like some of the stuff that he's done and contributed to, and he endorsed Gretsch drums. I have a signature Taylor Hawkins Gretsch snare, a nickel snare. So I mean that is very sad, but it's also under some very interesting circumstances because initially we didn't hear the reason.
Right.
Today we're hearing it was related to drug use and possibly 10 different type of drugs in his system. So my question to you, Max, is a rock star level. Right. Maybe you're doing jazz like a Kenny G, but that's kind of rock star level. Yeah. But in general, at that level, why do you think people have to be experimenting with that sort of thing? You would think, I mean, they've got a mansion, a yacht, a private jet.
To be honest with you,
why do they need that?
I'm thinking to myself that, because I think it was just like, we're on the road, we've been cooped up, it's like, let's have a little fun. And I think he just overdid it.
Okay.
Because, there's different levels of partying, there's, having a little toot, and then there's just going all out. And man, when I saw the variety that he had in his system, I'm thinking, oh my God, I mean, that's some serious partying, and it makes you wonder. It's like, God, it's like, maybe he should have had like somebody with him, to say no.
Okay.
Because that's the toughest thing about being on the road, is the ability to say no.
Right. Right.
Because I mean, I'll be honest with you. Going back to my cruise ship days, there was a lot of alcoholism, because of the gig. Because think about it, you don't have to drive to the gig, so it was easy, for everybody to just drink, especially since booze was so cheap, on a boat, But when I think about it now, it's like, I don't drink that way anymore. That was, we're talking almost 30 years ago now, and
have you had some close calls yourself? Sort of wake up calls?
I only had that just one episode, on the boat where it was darn near, alcohol poisoning.
Okay. So you had to check yourself.
Yeah, and that was, that was a good wake up call, to go, okay, it's like I got to learn how to pace myself, and when I think about it now, because my father was a bit of a performer, and I noticed that he would always just milk one drink for the whole night, you know, and
That's
now
smart.
I know why.
That's smart.
And now I know why.
Yeah.
You know, because he had the illusion that he was drinking all the time, but he really was having that one. That's all he had.
So he blended in.
Yeah.
To satisfy the critics.
Exactly. Which then, when I think about it now, I go, okay, I get it. You know, because I do the same thing now. It's like, you know, when I'm on a gig now, I'll maybe have no more than 1 or 2 beers.
Okay.
And that's it.
Okay.
You know, it's like, and there are some places where I don't even drink at all, only because for me it might be a long drive, and I got to be able to get home.
Right.
You know, and I don't know if you noticed lately they have checkpoints and things, and so the last thing I need, you know, is to go through a checkpoint
and get caught up in that.
Yeah.
On the way to a gig or something, right?
Yeah. So, you know, knock wood, you know, dude, I haven't had a speeding ticket in 25 years.
Awesome.
You know, so that's why I'm, you know, my attitude is like, I don't need that aggravation in my life.
Sure. Sure. Max, what are you working on these days? You know, as I said initially, you're very busy, very sought after, and I know you go through periods where you're doing sort of different projects. I think you just did sort of a church, you know, gig kind of situation, as many of us do.
Yeah.
But you've done the corporate thing, quite a bit of recording, you know, for different artists. But in general, what are you working on right now that you could tell the viewers about?
We're right in the middle of recording a Hemisphere album.
Okay.
And that's kind of, it's funny, that band has changed directions so many times. I mean, we started off as a smooth jazz kind of vibe, and then we went into world music, and now we're back into a kind of a semi-pop adult contemporary thing. But, you know, there's tinges of everything in there. I mean, there's a little bit of rock, a little bit of jazz in some of the writing, you know, so there's that. And I'm still doing, you know, the occasional industrial stuff where they ask me to, you know, to score something, you know, but you know, nothing earth shattering.
Okay.
You know, for the most part, what's keeping me, you know, busy is you know, having a steady church gig and having a corporate gig.
Okay.
You know, because the corporate gig's nice.
Yeah, of course. You know? Oh, yeah. I mean, I can recall a couple of years ago, it was hard to get a hold of you. You were doing a lot of that, you know, maybe before the pandemic.
And it still is.
It's coming back, right?
Right.
Awesome.
Yeah, in fact, yeah, it's like, you know, 4 weddings this particular month. So it's a good month, you know, so it's you know, it's I'm glad things are opening up again. Okay. You know, and I'm just happy to see all my friends working too, you know, because, you know, I heard too many stories of, you know, people losing, you know, apartments and stuff, and I go, oh man, it's like everybody needs to be working, you know, because I mean, you know, the world works when everybody's working, you know. So it's kind of stuff, you know, it's kind of tough when everybody's cooped up. Okay. You know, no place to go.
Gotcha.
You know, there's that.
Cool. Max, you are, again, as you say, sort of called to do more of the smooth jazz thing.
Right.
But what do you listen to yourself if you're listening to something? What do you put on and listen to?
Oh, man. Okay. Lately, I've been listening to, like, you know, stuff that's like neo soul. You know, I've been listening to Corey Henry. Okay. You know, I've been digging his stuff.
A little gospel-y kind of sound?
Yeah, I dig
kinda,
his
sorta?
vibe.
Okay.
You know, a band called Moonchild. It's like, you know, I went on the deep end. You know, I was listening to like different female singers, and I came across this singer from the UK, Mahalia. Okay. This girl, badass singer, and because of her, I discovered, you know, Moonchild, and I go, who's this band? And then I remember that somebody else from one of my other bands had mentioned the band. They go, oh, you got to check them out. And I just dove in, you know, I went to their website, ordered all of their albums. Nice. You know, and so I listen to that stuff all the time, you know, it's like that and Dirty Loops. Okay. You know, it's like, you know, I like the stuff that's, you know, ear candy. Yeah. You know, it's like, you know,
kind of modern, very modern kind of things, right?
Yeah. You know, you know, every musician, man, we're always listening for ear candy. Okay. You know, and then at the same time, I'm also listening to like classic rock, you know, alternative stuff, you know, and also some old fusion stuff because I went to go see Al Di Meola the other night at the Magnolia. And he mentioned that there was another night that he did. Okay, you know how he had that album Friday Night, you know, in San Francisco.
Yes, with Paco de
Lucia and John McLaughlin. He said
beautiful.
He said they recorded that whole weekend.
Yeah.
And so he had recordings from the next night, from Saturday night, and they're putting that album out.
Oh wow!
And I go,
have to check that out. That was mind-blowing acoustic stuff, man.
Exactly, and so that's why I said, oh, I have to buy that as soon as I see the pre-order. You know what I mean?
I'll definitely look into that.
You know, and then the last thing I listened to was an album called Ride of Strings.
Okay.
And it's with Jean-Luc Ponty and Stanley Clarke.
Okay.
And I forgot who the other guy was on that album.
And that sounds like a little bit of a takeoff of the classical work, The Rite of Spring.
Yeah. But it's all these like great fusion
cats.
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
You know, and you know they got chops, and I've been a Jean-Luc fan, you know, forever. You know, because one of my high school buddies was a big Jean-Luc Ponty fan. And,
oh wow! Yeah.
And he turned me, because I mean that was the same year that I got turned on to Pat Metheny. You know, it's like Lyle Mays became a big hero to me. You know, for a whole lot of things. You know. But,
cool.
Yeah.
Who are your top 3 heroes on the keyboard?
Ooh.
Top 3 in order.
Top 3 in order. Wow, that's tough. You know, I would have to say, wow.
Who's number 1?
Number 1, all around, would probably be Greg Fillinganes.
Okay, all right.
Only because
a little bit of Earth, Wind, and Fire in there.
Yeah, only because you know I seen him when I was a teenager. You know, he was playing in Wonder Love. You know, he was in, you know, Stevie's band. And he, you know, anything connected to Stevie, you know, I thought was great.
Okay.
You know, I mean, Stevie is still a big idol to me, you know, but Greg, you know, he's one of those cats that he's like a chameleon. Okay. You know, I mean, because, you know, he can easily go from the Stevie gig and go play with Toto.
Right, right.
You know, without skipping a beat, and then do a Michael Jackson session.
Okay. All right. Who's number 2? Who's number 2?
Number 2, probably be Paul Schaefer.
Okay.
You know, from the Dave Letterman band.
Yeah.
You know, and
great band.
Another hero.
Definitely an influence
what
myself
I
as
dug
well.
about
that
him
band
was his fearlessness.
Okay.
You know, he had no fear of playing any style.
And he played for some great people. They played for Miles. They played for everybody that came in town to do that show.
You know, I mean, even James Brown.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
yes, I remember that episode.
That was like the hippest, man. I was
it was funky too.
I loved it. And then number 3, oh boy, strictly for orchestration, would probably be Lyle Mays.
Okay.
You know, only because I just thought about him and
get back to the contemporary jazz a little bit there.
Yeah, because you know, texturally, you know, he was one of those cats that he was coming out of that Bill Evans thing, but he was very orchestral in his choices, you know, and man, it's just beautiful stuff. I mean, everything he did with Metheny was always ear candy to me.
Right.
You know, I mean, you know, when I listened to, you know, the Off Ramp album.
Okay.
That album to me, because I heard that album when I was in high school, and that album messed me up.
Right.
You know, so that, you know, that was a starting point. I mean, because of that, I had to go back and discover even the earlier, you know, Pat Metheny stuff, because I had already heard Bright Size Life like everybody else because of Jocko. Right. You know. But I never really, you know, paid attention, you know, to the stuff that Lyle did with him before Off Ramp, you know. So
cool.
Yeah.
Max, I'm not sure if you have students or not, but what would you say to a young listener or somebody of any age that's just starting out as a musician, and in particular as a pianist or keyboard player? What words of wisdom would you offer them?
Oh man. I really don't have any anymore, because it's like my last student graduated. Okay. You know, it's like, in fact,
Went off to Berkeley, huh?
Yeah, actually, no, you actually went off to Harvard.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
You know, but yeah, yeah, you can't really give advice because, music is always evolving.
Okay.
And kids are going to listen to what they're going to listen to, and that's why, I mean, one of my buddies, from high school, he's always saying, "Oh, I'm not into this new music." I'm thinking, God, you're missing out.
Okay.
Because there's so much cool stuff that I'm thinking you might like only because of the vibe.
Okay.
But he doesn't like it because it's new.
Gotcha.
And he doesn't want to pay no mind to some of the youngsters that are coming up. And I'm like going, I don't get it, because I mean, there's a reason why Quincy, Quincy Jones has his ear always, extended, because he's listening to
the
everybody.
next thing.
Yeah, man, because it's like, because of him, I paid attention to Jacob Collier.
Yep.
I listened to that stuff.
Amazing.
Oh man, it's
genius level.
Yeah, the Dirty Loops band, for one, it's like when they first, came out with those couple of videos, I go, who are these guys, and one of my dear friends, who happens to be Swedish, he would joke. He goes, "Man, it's because they're holed up, in their house all winter, so they got nothing to do but shed."
Right.
And I go, I get it.
Right.
But I loved it just because it was really musical, and when I got to see them at the NAMM show, it's like I go, wow, they're even nicer in person.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, so on the subject of advice, let me ask you this. Let me invert that. In your musical journey, what would you say to someone as far as probably what they may not want to do?
Ooh. You know what? I can't even give advice for that because I did things that I didn't want to do.
Like what?
Like
what?
But, well, country for one.
Okay,
I never pictured myself playing country music.
Okay.
But you know what? I learned to like it.
Country pays well, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And it just reminded me of what my father used to tell me, because my father said, if you're going to be a professional musician, learn to like everything.
That's very good advice.
Because
that's good advice.
Because he said if you pigeonhole yourself into one genre, it's like you're going to miss out on all these other opportunities.
Awesome. Awesome.
And so, because of my pop, I did theater.
Okay.
I did musical theater. I loved that. In fact, I love the hours. But nobody calls me to do that anymore, because when you say no more than once, they stop calling you for those gigs.
Gotcha.
But someday they might call me again, for that theater gig.
We know they will, because one of the reasons on the subject. So you and I have worked together many occasions in the last 10 years, off and on, in the studio, on the stage, in different musical settings. And one of the things that I admire about you is that, as you have sort of just framed it up, you're very, very broad in your spectrum of things that you can sort of pull from. And we had the pleasure to work together in a residency that I did the back end of last year. You came in, and I thought it was very refreshing that you were able to not only do your part, harmonically, but you were able to add some little embellishments, a little bit of things like vocally, and playing the little things in between. Like there's a George Benson tune that has not only the harmonic structure of the tune, but there's these little synth things that are happening in between. You knew it all, and a lot of people are just going to drop the pads and that's it. So I appreciated that, and I appreciated the little element of the vocal things that you've sort of brought to the table, because we know you do that well as well. But listen, on that note, Max, we appreciate you coming out today. You've had an incredible musical journey, very rich, very broad. So blessings to you.
Thank you, sir.